Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hurley, and on today's show, we are discussing this weekend's action with the provincial finals in hurling coming up, with the Munster final, that titanic clash between Clare and Limerick, and also Galway and Kilkenny from Croke Park, and Tailteann Cup this weekend as well, with Carlow, New York being probably the main game out of all that, down in Longford also being shown on GA Go in that department. I'm delighted to be joined by Darragh O'Flynn from Duff Talks just to discuss this weekend's game. So how's all been with yourself, Darragh? Waterford out of both championships, but I'm sure you'll be keeping a close eye on both championships in any case.
Hi, Matthew, how are you? Jeez, thanks Sam for the reminding. But yeah, sure, Jesus, it was a disappointing year for the lads. But club championship there now in the next 7 weeks, so we're kind of focusing on that for the time being. But plenty of GA action to look forward to for the time being.
Exactly so, and maybe before we talk about the week GA action and the preview this weekend's games, I just want to ask you about Waterford in general. Like, the footballers went out last weekend, the hurlers went out 2 weeks ago, I think it was. The last game against Tip, obviously winning that game at a canter, really. Desi Hutchins was outstanding. I think he scored 110 from play the whole championship, but ultimately not enough, and Waterford went out with the championship. So where do you think has gone wrong in kind of both goals, more so in hurling, because there was a load of potential in that Waterford hurling team, with Davy Fitz coming in, a lot of the Ballygunner lads involved as well. There was young players coming through, like Patrick Fitzgerald, for example, Desi Hutchinson, Stephen Bennett, like just outstanding players of Waterford. So where do you think has gone wrong this year for the Dacia?
There's a few permutations you could look at, really. Well, first of all, you could say luck. Well, with the Burke out first game, Killy's gone. They'd be lucky back for the club championship. Then Michael Kiley with his hand. Just then Jamie was in and out with injury with a quad, and then even Austin Gleeson started. Austin Gleeson only started one game this year, like nearly Waterford's talisman. You kind of hoping he played the whole year if you want to win something. But then at the tactical point of view, playing one man inside the full forward line is not going to win you much these days. Like, I kind of think Tip were a bit naive in some way. They kind of left Waterford carry out the ball and it suit him down to a T against Tip, but in a suit him fair advantage with the goal. Like, the goal was a fluke, to be honest with you. Shelley would have got that 9 times out of 10, but it was a more a boosting victory to look on to things for next year. I can't see it being as bad next year. There should be tweak one or two things. Like, I know what you think, but one man inside full forward line. Like, I was at the Dublin game, the league game, beginning of the year, and they started off first 15 minutes 3-man side. So it was Tom Barron, Michael Kiley, Stephen Bennett, and then Davy gave off a signal, and then they're all gone off. Stephen and Tom were gone out the half forward, so they're playing 5 out in the half forward line. So it's Michael Kiley inside with 3 then, so because they didn't follow him out the half forward line. So it didn't work, because Waterford long range shooting 9 times out of 10, that's not going to work, because it's just demoralising, hitting wide after wide after wide. You just have to have a real solid day. And as I said earlier with the Burke, Caelan Knight is a sweeper, but the Burke is just a master of the role. It's just, there's no one else going to be better than him in the county, I think. And it's just from a football perspective, sure, look, the Waterford don't have the best players playing for. Like, even look with Denard, like Conor Gleeson, Jamie, Tom Byrne, Shawnee Welsh was on the panel, probably some of our best footballers. Like, they'd be on the county if it was football dominated county. Like, you have Dermot Ryan was the only fella on Denard this year, and then like it was more the Rathgormack dominated, which is Conor Murray, your Jason Gleeson's, your Stephen Curry was on for a while. But you just need to get the best players playing. Like, if Waterford's championships have been changed this year, so like, they're going to get 2 teams get relegated. There were 2 teams relegated last year from senior, another 2 this year. So it's going to be 8 next year. So you have senior, premier, intermediate, and junior. But if you're basing off this year's panel at intermediate and junior, you have nearly half, 3/4 the panel playing intermediate and junior, which is not good enough for inter-county. Like,
it isn't really, no. And you got 1 win this year against London, to be fair to you, but like, it's going to be a long road for Waterford to go back. I think the last time you were in Division 3 was, I think it was around 2012, was it? So that's a long road back.
yeah,
to go
geez,
back
2010, I think even it was 2010 they would have got promoted. Yeah,
2011 maybe.
Yeah, 22. Yeah, it's not too long ago. Sure, they're still celebrating wins like Wexford last. And sure, they were called spade. They were probably unlucky against Tip. Like, probably thinking with all Tip, it's the park. But
Yeah, sure.
I don't know, it's the only way it's up, like.
Exactly, yeah. And I was at the tip game, and I was kind of winning on Waterford to get a goal at the end, but wasn't to be at the end. And both sides went over the championship, which was pretty sad to look at in the end. But yeah, we will get on to this weekend's action, including that competition, the Tailteann Cup, and the other teams in it. But first of all, we'll talk about the week in the GA, and a few things happened. Obviously, last weekend there was the huge controversy around the penalty with the Cork and Kerry game. Paul Ganey being pulled down by Sean Powder. David Goff gave the penalty for both goal scoring opportunity, and yeah, it was a difficult one for Cork to take, really. And there was other instance. Obviously, David Nelson stepping down as Meath Ladies football manager was another thing to look at, and also the tragic passing of Teddy McCarthy, the Cork, the legend for Cork GA, both hurling and football, the only man to win football and hurling All-Ireland senior title in the same year, which was 1990, of course. So a lot to get through, Darragh. So first of all, condolences really to the McCarthy family on the loss of Teddy, some legend.
Oh, it's a big legend of the game. Deepest condolences with his friends and family, but it's just a legend of the game. Not the only man I'd say it'll never be done again, winning both, even the same year. I'd say something back then you were knocked out and you had just say you have a few months to focus on one sport and then focus on the other year. But also I only kind of discovered there yesterday that like Dennis Walsh was on the panel, but sure, subs didn't get medals back in the day. So he's technically, he's still has a medal as well. Technically, he's won both, but it's sort of a bit before my time now. But the farther and what people have been saying, it's just an iconic legend of the game. Just field and catching, just the engine room was ridiculous.
Exactly, yeah, he was an unbelievable legend. And just on the other bits of news, I suppose the Meath Ladies football with Davy Nelson stepping down, I'm sure you posted on your page as well, Doff Talks, like it was a shock really when it came in. Like I know Eamon Murray was a legend. Meath didn't seem to be motoring along nicely really in the Ladies Football League. They finished, I think, second bottom in Division 1, just ahead of Donegal, who ultimately went down. They lost 2 games to Dublin in the Leinster Championship, beat Laois. But going into a ladies football group with Waterford and Donegal, 2 tough teams, and then for your manager to step down and the whole backroom team to step down as well, like that must have been hard on the B players. And you'd have to imagine, is Eamon Murray coming back as well? Because if he comes back, that'll be a huge boost to Meath.
But that's the rumour at the moment that he is coming back, Matthew. But I don't know, it doesn't bode well for him. Obviously, there's something wrong with the tactics, or players weren't impressed. Sure, if you're as like prime examples like David Moyes going to replacing Alex Ferguson, really, just what you're used to, they're going to expect that standard throughout, and obviously it didn't deliver. Sure, from a Waterford perspective, you don't know what to think of it. They'll either be morals on the ground or they'll be just raging and give Waterford debating, but it's hard to know at the same time. But you've seen it happen so often now with managers, even this year with the Gaelic football. It's just if players aren't happy, they're going to change because you don't play long, like, and the season goes like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was a shock really with Davy Nelson stepping down, and well, the Meath players, there's still some players there, so like you'd like to think that they'd recover and get back up the horse for the Ladies Football Championship. But indeed, it's going to be a very, very hard group with Waterford and the Ulster champions Donegal and that. And just before we get into the games as well, the penalty decision last weekend, there was a lot of talk on social media. Regardless of whether it was inside or outside the box, it was a goal scoring opportunity deemed by David Goff. But a lot of people complaining about it, saying that Paul Ganey really didn't have a chance for a goal. How could he score from there? Brian O'Driscoll and Daniel O'Malley coming in from the back as well. So what do you think of it all yourself? Do you think it was a penalty, first of all?
I'd say nearly asking from a Cork's perspective, if it happened to you, do you think it'd be a penalty? Speaking the rules, like, it is a penalty. But if it happened to you, you think it'd be fair soft?
Yeah.
Jeez, like, looking at it, like he could have, like, I don't know, the angle... Like, Micheál Martin should have had it covered anyway. If he took the shot, he should have saved it. And then if he was going to pass the ball across, it was an open goal at the same time. You could look at it that way. But I don't know. I think it's ridiculously soft. I can see why it's given. Like, letter of the law, it had to be given. But, geez, if that happened to me, I'd be fairly pissed off now, to be honest with you.
I would as well, yeah. And John Forkley actually cleared up on Twitter that if the ball went into it doesn't matter if the ball went into Paddy Clifford. It is all on Paul Ganey. It's all on the shooter in this situation. So, Like, for me, it's not a penalty, but at the same time, I could see your point of view. If it was given to Cork, you might say, look, it's the rules, like what Jack O'Connor said in the post-match interview. So we'll have to see how it develops later on the summer. Is the referee's going to give the penalty decision? Well, they didn't give it in the Dublin Kildare game. Sean Hurston was the referee in that game, and he didn't give a penalty decision to Niall Scully. So we'll have to see how it develops in the weeks ahead. But we will get into the action, and what a game to start us off. Clare against Limerick in the Gaelic grounds at 2 p.m. on Sunday in RT2. This is a mouth-watering game, and when you consider, like, Clare are the kind of team to have Limerick's number over the last few seasons. Obviously, the round robin, they beat them in the Gaelic grounds with Peter Duggan putting in a masterful performance. Obviously, Tony Kelly as well. Like, Clare were up for that night in the Gaelic grounds, and last season as well. Technically, after 70 minutes, Clare didn't lose to Limerick in the 2 games last season. So, like, it's the kind of team that has Limerick's number this season, and with Limerick performing not so well this season, like, this is a big opportunity for Clare to win their first title since the late 90s.
It is and it isn't really, because like if Conor Cleary's out, there's rumours now that he's going to play, but it's defined signs really that he's playing with a broken collarbone only 2.5 weeks ago. Like, I don't know if you ever broke a collarbone, but it takes longer than 2.5 weeks to be playing. Like, but even if you look at the matchups, like who's going to go full back, Shane Moore would probably start, but I'd probably put McInerney full back, which I don't know. Looking when he played there against Cork, he wasn't too convincing, if you ask me. They had swapped him and Hogan, but do Clare have enough cover? It could be like a repeat of Kilkenny last year. John Collin went and it all went to pot, to be honest with you. So they have enough. It's probably their centre back and full back is the two worst positions possible that they could lose a man. Like, I'd say if they lost centre forward, full forward, midfield, any other line, that should be grand. But I don't know. I kind of hard to see him win without Conor Cleary. I can't see Lighton striking twice anyway.
Yeah, it's a tough one actually, because when you look, Conor Cleary, as you mentioned, could be injured for this game. And when you look at Seamus Flanagan, I know Limerick haven't performed well in many facets of play this season, but he has a particular 4 goals and 7 points all from play. So, like, you'd have to question, if Conor Cleary's out, who's going to go on Flanagan? Because when you look at the Cork game in particular, Cahalane went on him and got really murdered at the full back line, really. So, like, it's going to be a tough job to go on Seamus Flanagan, even if Conor Cleary is fit. Like, you'd have to imagine, if he does start, will he be fit enough to deal with Seamus Flanagan in that full back line?
I actually don't see him marking Flanagan, to be honest with you. I'd say it'd be marking Galland. That's who he usually marks. I'd say it'd probably be McInerney marking him if it was normal with Cleary there, and then or maybe Hogan. But I'd say it'd be usually he marks Galland, but I wouldn't want to be marking Galland with a bad arm, to be honest with you. But even speaking of, will Tony Kelly be man-marked? I doubt it. Like, he's just scored ridiculous amounts against him every time they play it. Like 9 points, 8 points, once 7 was a one of the games. I can't really top of the head. Michael Verney had it up on Twitter, but like, Limerick just play their own game and just try and go for the win. I know the players aren't in form, but I don't see him not starting Hegarty and your Keane Lynch's, and I see Glenn. I don't see Keane Lynch not starting, and he's surely being formed. Like, I can't see him playing as bad as he did. And Hegarty usually kind of sparks into life around this time. Now, last year there was this same conversation what's up with Hegarty, and then he just scored a ridiculous goal in last year's month to final and just took off. Then got an all-star. Like,
exactly, and you look at Hegarty's form this season. It's probably worse than last season up until the Munster final. To be fair, he scored 5 points so far in 4 games. That's not really, all-star standard, if you want to put it that way. Peter Casey scored 4 points as well and was very good in the Cork game. And he's another player that I think he's going to light up sometime. Keane Lynch as well, if he's fit for this game, he's only scored a point so far. So Limerick are not hitting the heights as they were last year. But do you feel the Cork game in particular, I know they only won by a point in the end, against a very good Cork team, to be fair, but do you think that game will kind of set off Limerick on a rampage this summer? Or do you think this state of form at the moment for Limerick is going to be an indicator of what's to come later on down the line?
See, if you're asking me this question after the game, you could tell a lot, but at the same time, they've been stuttering and they look fatigued, to be honest with you. Do they have any change? They've only from the All-Ireland, the first All-Ireland 2018, they've only 1-2 changes max from the same team, so it's going on the road constantly. It's going to run out the battery eventually, and just picking up injuries now, as you see with Keane Lynchy's just picking up injuries all the time. Declan Han's even picking up injuries. I know Sean Finn's was a cruciate that you can't expect for that, but little niggles like that, it's just the body's taking its toll. Like, even if you look at Clare, they're just introducing Rodgers and your Meehans and all that. I know with their under-20s last year, they're Cathal O'Neill and you have Colin Coughlin and Adam English, but they're not being introduced. Like, they're not being trusted to take over the mantle yet. So if they come out and blitz Clare, I'd actually have Limerick favourites. Just if I don't think Conor Cleary would be fit enough to play, that's the only major factor I give it. I give it only 1 or 2 points. But if they come out and win, it's just momentum. They have, let's see, they have 2-3 weeks off. Am I correct? Around 2 or 3 weeks off then to recover and go again for an All-Ireland semi-final. And it'd be hard to stop them if they get to Croke Park, to be honest with you.
But then again, like, the losers of this game would most likely be Dublin in the quarterfinals. And let's be honest, let's be real about it. And no offence to any Dublin fans, but Limerick or Clare should be beating them anyway. But that's for another day's discussion. But just before we get into a prediction, Clare for a minute, 16 different scores. They've been probably the most on-farm team this season. When you take out the Tipperary game early on in the season, they were defended very badly in that game. And they made a small bit of tweaks for the Limerick game. It worked. And then against Waterford, without performing particularly well, they still won that game. And then against Cork, they won that game by a point in the end through Dermot Ryan's late score. So, and when you look at Clare scores, 8 McCarthy, Tony Kelly with 2 goals and 22 points. That's 112 from play, which is a ridiculous tally, really. Mark Rodgers with 2-4, Ian Galvin 1-3, Ryan Taylor's chipping in, Shane O'Donnell. So there's a lot more scores for the Clare team this season than there was last season when they performed particularly well, when they nearly surprised everybody. So do you think this Clare team is on the road for something really special in general later on down the summer? Because when you look at their performances this season and last season, they're definitely leading up to something.
Yeah, on paper, based on what we've seen the last 2 years, they've been the best team consistently. Just they should have caused Bay Spade. They're probably unlucky not to win Munster last year. And this year, they've probably been, if you took out the Tip game, they should have won that. Like, Foley, just the mistakes cost them that day. But even, look, they haven't been convinced in some respects in defence, like, and even freeze. Like, if you look at it, Aidan McCarthy went off the last day, they just went up the walls. They were free. Tony Kelly missing easy frees. I think they changed. Peter Duggan missed a free as well. Like, if McCarthy's off, do they have a solid free taker? Would be my question. That you need a solid free taker to win any game. But look, yeah, on paper you could say they're second best team. Some might say the best team in the country at the moment. A lot will tell this weekend, but even after you saw what happened to him last year, how much it took out of him in the Munster final, would the same thing happen again this year, win or lose? And that'd be my only question about Clare. Do they have the bottle to back it up?
That's the thing with Clare. Like, over the last few seasons, I've been studying this. Like, when they won the All-Ireland the 2013 successful season, the next season they lose to Limerick, to Wexford, in the qualifiers. 2018 they have a successful year, reaching the All-Ireland semi-final, go up the Munster group the next year. They reached the Munster final last season. Then this season there's question marks. So, well, to be honest, they've quite the doubters so far this season. But your question is, could a similar thing happen with let's say a Kilkenny incident last season where they get ambushed to the All-Ireland semi-final? So that's the fear with Clare, in my opinion, like, even if they have a good team or not.
Yeah, see, look, they have the record of it happening, so until they prove that it can't happen, people are going to keep saying that question. That happens with any team in general. Like, until you prove the doubt was wrong, you're not going to silence them. So it's hard to know. They have more subs this year, you could argue, but still, if you get injuries in the back line is where you're questioning the doubt. Do they have the depth at cornerback and fullback, or even the entire back line? Even in goals, like, and that's doubting Foley. I'd like to see him. It's hard to see a fella just disappear after one game like that, but they're not a one-man band anymore. You can't so say it's Tony Kelly guiding Clare to this and that. They have Peter Duggan. Would you say he's had his best season? No, he could spark it up there this weekend. Mark Rodgers has been in and out. He probably was good against Limerick. Probably was his best game. And then, like, you have Shanahan to come on, Shane Meehan, he's an excellent sub to have on. And then, like, Ian Galvin, sure, I'd say it's probably one of his best years in a while.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at the under-20s and the minors coming through as well, like Patrick Crotty's another player. He was in the senior setup last year. I'm not so much sure if he's in it this season, but in the under-20s, he was absolutely on fire. You look at Keith Smith there as well, Mark O'Brien, Michael Collins and the minor team. The Clare has some very good young players coming up, and you'd have to imagine Tony Kelly might stick around to play with some of those players as well. So the future does look good for Clare, even if they do lose on Sunday.
Oh yeah, definitely. Sure, Jesus is always looking good after we win something. Doesn't matter what age group in club or county. But even Owen Gunning, like he's exceptional cornerback. Jeez, to have him, he'll be some Cathal Barrett-esque there in the next few years. But even your Keith Smith and your Crotties, like they're very unlucky against Cork. I thought in the Munster final, the under-20s there this year, they were just a whisker beating them. Any other day they probably could have bet them. And in the minor, sure, they hadn't hope going into it, and they're going to be annihilated currently with the Galway team best in the land, and sure they showed up that they're not too bad themselves. So a very few exciting years for Clare, especially if you look at 2 years ago. Was it 2 or 3 years ago? They lost, was it 6-28, was it 7 points, something like that, to Cork in the minor, and just to turn around like that with all their developments and structures and having people involved all the way up, it just shows it can be fixed quick if you have the right people involved.
Exactly. So, and just for this game in particular, who do you think is going to win it? Is it going to be Limerick for the 5th Munster title in a row, or is Clare going to win their first title since the late 90s? Let's not forget, like every other county in the Munster Championship has won the championship at least once since Clare last won it, including your own Waterford in 2010. So, like that's a big stat for Clare to overcome. Do you think they'll do it on Sunday?
As 1998, I think the last time they won it, but I don't think it's going to change this year. Just with Conor Cleary and his shoulder injury, they don't have the replacement if he's not playing, and if he's playing, I don't think he's fit enough to be playing. To be honest with you, if I was Clare, I'd keep him for a quarter final or even semi final if doing without him. To be honest with you, just say if he gets injured again, he's gone. That's just backfire straight away on Owen. If that's my opinion, so I'd be giving Limerick to win by 2 or 3 as well.
Yeah, it could go to extra time as well. So we'll definitely fasten our seatbelts for this game. And by the way, I predict the Limerick win as well in this. But Clare will test them all the way. And looking at the next game in Croke Park is the Leinster final between Kilkenny and Galway. We probably knew this pairing would happen for a while off, to be honest with you, at 4 o'clock on Sunday on RT2. And funnily enough, actually, they're opening Croke Park at 1:15 or something like that, and they're showing the Munster final on the big screen. So just before we get into the game, Darragh, what do you think of that? It's kind of an innovative idea, to be honest with you, but do you think they're kind of trying to get fans in for the Leinster final just to watch the Munster final beforehand?
Yeah, I think there was a story going around there that Kilkenny weren't too impressed that it's usually the Leinster finals on first, so you'd have the people in and then you could go out to the pub or something like that to watch the second game. But with the Munster final on first, I think people are giving out that people don't go to the match because they'd rather watch the Munster final. Just the better the spectacles, if you ask me. But no, yeah, I can see it's a good idea, but if you're going to support your county, you're going to go anywhere. Like if that by my opinion.
Yeah, definitely so. And this game in particular, like it's probably a pairing, unlike Clare and Limerick, which was unpredictable throughout the Munster Championship. This pairing has been branded about for ages, really. When you consider the quality in Leinster, Wexford have gone back, Dublin aren't really up to the level either, and then you have Westmeath and Antrim. So everybody kind of expected this pairing even before it was confirmed.
Dublin nearly questioned that there from their first half display in Croke Park the last day. They kind of put it was more Galway being lackadaisical than anything, but they only got one. I had written down 1-5 or 1-6 in the second half, Dublin or something like that, after scoring 2-17, sorry, in the first half or something like. But look, I'd be saying Galway have been hit and miss the whole year, if you ask me. Like they kind of been bits and patches in the whole championship. Like in Galway, they were lighting it up first 15-20 minutes, then Kilkenny came back into it for the rest of the game until Galway kind of rescued it. Even prime example, the Dublin game. So the first half, it's the worst I've ever seen Galway play, to be honest with you, and then they just kind of thundered back into it. I with the injuries reported with Kilkenny, it's hard to know what's up with Kilkenny, but Galway should be up for it. Like Sheffield needs silverware at the end of the day. Like,
yeah, exactly. So Galway have some very good players, and they definitely need the Leinster Championship. They haven't won it since 2018. That's a long time for a Leinster Championship for Galway, really. Like Wexford have won it since then. Kilkenny have won a load since then. So that's a big one for Henry Shefflin to get over it. Just a matter of interest. Like a point was made in the previous episode of the podcast with Seamus Brady of Play on GA. He says that Henry Shefflin going to Galway was probably one of the most, questionable decisions from Galway, considering he might be chosen to be the Kilkenny manager in the next few seasons. And Galway are Kilkenny's nearest rivals in Leinster for a long time, really. So what do you think of that? Do you think it's kind of a bad decision for Galway to, show Henry Shefflin the ropes in Galway before he inevitably goes on to Kilkenny, or do you think it was a wise decision for Galway to appoint him in the first place?
I based off his club record, you'd be a fool not to appoint him. If you ask me, it's just 2 All-Irelands in a row. No one's ever going to match that. Haven't matched it since. But like, I can see what you're talking about. You're kind of training him up to fall you down there in the next couple of years. But what happened if he was a miss there the first year and he was gone? Would Kilkenny want him? Be my question. Probably not, but I know the name factor do enough itself. But I know you're gonna have to take a gamble on it sometime and hope, sure, as we see with Galway, they always have minor players coming through, that the replacement for Shefflin might be better than Shefflin himself, if you get me. Like,
that's the thing, yeah. But I suppose Seamus's point was that Shefflin would manage Galway, then he'd go on to Kilkenny, and he'd have all the the ins and outs of the Galway team, like who's best for Evan Nyland, who's best for Conor Whelan the next few seasons. So what do you think about that? Do you think it was kind of a questionable decision because of that reason? Because he'll go on to Kilkenny, and then Galway will be wary of Henry knowing all their strengths.
You can look at it that way, but like at the same time, that's happening. That happened. Prime example, Dublin Galway, sure. Micheál Donoghue knew just say the players he was involved with, and you see it in all across the country in club championships. You could have a fella managing 1 year and he's managing someone else the next year. But I think, just from personal opinion, if you're good enough, you should know what you do yourself. Like, you should, if your tactics are spot on, you should be able to outmaneuver just say potential man marking jobs, and you should know that even going into a game, you're probably going to have someone eyeing you up, if you ask me. Like, so I don't see it being that kind of way, because look, you don't know who's coming through in the minor next few years. Like, I know Nyland and all that, but just say when Shefflin's not there, you could have 1 or 2 more players, and there's always 1 or 2 more players coming in that you don't know about, that you can't plan for anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose everybody has their different opinions on this, but we will get on to the game in general, because you look at Galway's forwards, like Evan Nyland's on form this year, scoring 48 points. I think it's 19 points per play, which is impressive. Conor Whelan hasn't probably been in his best form this year, but he still scored 5 goals and 5 points per play. Brian Concannon, again, hasn't been in his best form, but still scored 210. So, and Kevin Cooley with 2-9 as well. Declan McLaughlin, young player, with 170, scored the equalising point in that meeting in Nolan Park as well. So Galway definitely have a good few forwards for Kilkenny to keep an eye on. Question for you, Darragh, like Mikey Butler's the main guy for Kilkenny when you consider what he did to Tony Kelly last year in the All-Ireland semi-final. Who do you think he'll go on out of them Galway forwards on Sunday?
Sorry, Matthew, my Wi-Fi went there for a few seconds. Just flicked. So, no, back to your question. I heard your question, Mikey Butler. Look, I thought it was just crazy. They were through to a Leinster final, and they knew they were going to play in either Dublin or Galway. Why did he pull out a full-strength team? That'd be my question. Do you agree or not? But, like, if you look at, like, Mullen, John Fogarty said he could be playing. And then the Independent had it that, what you call it, he's out for 3 months and could miss the beginning of the club championship. So he's hardly going to be playing if you look at it that way. So you kind of catch in between. And then Mossy Keown, with a hamstring injury, he definitely won't be back if it's grade 1, 2, or 3. It's either grade 1 or 2 tear or something like that. And then Mikey Butler, I don't know either as well. No one knows his injury status. Isn't it the ankle he rolled over or something like that? But look, I don't know if you agree, but I don't think there should have been. He should have put out a few experimental teams. I know you could have been saying then from a Westmeath point of view, the integrity of the competition if they were putting out second string players, and Wexford had a handy win, but it's hard to know. Like,
Jesus, yeah, like when you consider that with the amount of injuries for Kilkenny, it was kind of a stupid move. But when you look at a few weeks ago, the Laois manager was saying the Offaly manager should have put out a main team against Carlow. So, like, you can't. It's kind of a situation where you can't win. Well, you can't win in either case really, because if you put out a strong team, you're going to get injuries. And if you put out a weak team, then you're going to get given out by the team involved, hence Westmeath or Laois or anybody like that. So, like, in my point of view anyway, you can't win either way.
I see it from the Offaly perspective, and I even see it from more or less the Offaly perspective. They were true, and so they were designing their own fate. Like, they were resting players. I can see it from that way. I just don't see why Kilkenny didn't follow the same mantra that they knew they were playing in this game and not to risk the players. That'd be my looking at it. Like, if you're true in a group, and I don't even think they were looking at it from perspective of, oh, we can play Carlow or we can avoid Laois. I say they were looking at it as, oh, these lads have been playing, is it 8 weeks in a row they were playing? Let's give them some rest before they played the final. Look, we don't know, was it the detriment of how they lost, but only they will know that themselves. But I think they could have rested players easily.
Maybe so, yeah. And judging by the fact that Mikey Butler might be injured for this game, we don't know if he's going to play. Look at the Galway forwards there that I mentioned earlier on: Evan Nyland, Conor Whelan, Declan McLaughlin, Brian Concannon, Kevin Cooley. Who do you think will Kilkenny get to match up with those main forwards now that Mikey Butler's out? So that's going to be a big miss for Kilkenny.
The biggest problem with Galway has nearly been the ball into Conor Whelan, in my opinion. Like, he's just living off scraps, if I'm being honest with you. I know they're playing sometimes they're playing a two-man inside full forward line, but at the same time, the ball going in is either a big looping high ball that he has to win against two fellas, or it's a diagonal ball that's played with way too much pace on it, and even Usain Bolt wouldn't get out of it at the same time. So I think it's more the delivery into him. But with the terms of matchups, if Butler's playing, no one knows. I'd probably take him on Conor Whelan, and then see Evan Nyland. He kind of floats around. Is Richie Ree going to follow him? I don't know. Would you leave Evan Nyland free from play? He's more of a place ball striker than Enton, but he's been clinical more from place ball. He's kind of been roaming around this year than Enton, but I think Kilkenny kind of stick with your six backs and let him shoot if he wants. I don't think they're going to put a man marker on him anyway.
The thing is, though, with Evan Nyland, I know he's more, as you mentioned there, he's more of a place ball specialist, but he's got the most scores from play out of any Galway player this season. So, like, he's still a threat. You know, Kilkenny need to keep an eye on him still.
Oh, definitely, I'd agree, but still, do you see Kilkenny? They're traditional enough now. I don't see them doing. They're kind of like a Limerick in themselves. They don't designate man markers. Like, they designate man markers just saying in a corner back, full back line, like, but especially with a two-man full forward line, but you don't designate a Roman fella out the field. You don't. If you want someone to sit in six, you're going to need someone sitting six any day of the week. But even with Brian Concannon, we don't even know his injury status, so he only came on the last day. It would be interesting to see will he start. He's a threatened, as we saw at the last day against Kilkenny.
Exactly. So, and when you look at Kilkenny scores in particular, like, two players that jump off the page in scoring status, and the fact we think they're going to be injured for the game, or we can't be sure, and stuff like that. Mossy Keown and Adrian Mullen. Mossy Keown scored 4 goals and 9 points from play. Adrian Mullen scored 13 points from play. I know they've won Cody in 3 goals and 13 points. TJ Reid, obviously a place ball specialist in his own right, but to miss them two players, Keown and Mullen, that's going to be huge for Kilkenny.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Especially Mullen. He's just the engine room, and he's all over the place, and he's just bring him and Cody the driving force of this new Kilkenny team. He's a big loss. Even it's hard to see who they get to replace him. Like, Richie Hogan was the rumour that he broke his wrist or something in the Cork game or something like that. That's why he hasn't been seen. But Will he come back into it? Probably Mossy Keown's replacement be Walter Welsh. Probably you'd like to think like for like, I'd say, inside the full forward line. And with Mullen, you could see Richie Hogan maybe, but it's hard to know. Hard to know who to replace Mullen. Do you have a like for like replacement? I don't think so.
Probably not, but in fairness to one of the scores that actually popped up in sometimes in the past few games, Tom Phelan scored 1 goal and 8 points for playing the Leinster Championship. So, like, he's a player that's been around the fringes. Could he, step up on Sunday?
I say probably the most likely fella to step up. Even I know I said Walter Welsh a few seconds ago. It'd be interesting to see with Billy Drennan, since he had that injury. Will he come into the fray? Hasn't been featured a lot. So like, what he's shooting up the lights there in the league campaign, I say he's the most likely man to come in, do some damage.
Definitely so. Like, Billy is an outstanding player. He was the top scorer in Division 1 overall, and for him to come back, it's great for him more than anything. But who will take the freeze now on Sunday, TJ or Billy Drennan, if Billy Drennan starts, of course?
There's only one man for that. TJ will be taking him all day of the week. It's just he's fighting for that championship record. I say he's trying to extend it as much as he can while Horgan's not playing.
Exactly, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see that. But considering we talked about injuries with Kilkenny, Galway haven't been on form, but they still have very good players. Even if you take out Kilcannon, they still have Conor Whelan, they have Declan McLaughlin, they have Evan Nyland, they have Kevin Cooney, all ready and fit to go as far as we know. So you'd have to expect Galway to win for that particular reason. But considering last season, most people would have said Galway to win the Leinster Championship in the final in particular. Kilkenny didn't show up and win that. So, like, there's the question as well, do Galway have the big game mentality? So a tough prediction, this.
If you base it off injuries, it's not that, I don't think it's that tough now. I think if Kilkenny are missing that forward line, they won't cope without it. That'd be my opinion now. I know you have the replacements like Walter Welsh and Richie Hogan and feckin' Billy Drennan, but like at the same time, if Galway are trying to target a Leinster title, this is their time to do it. Like Shefflin, look at Shefflin, he needs to add silverware to Galway if Galway are to be seen as progressing, and then next year be focused the All Ireland. But sure, even with the form of Limerick, now is the time to win a Leinster title and meet them in the final and hopefully get that All Ireland victory for the first time since 2017. So I'd be giving Galway to win by 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'd probably go to the same margin just because of injuries, to be honest with you as well. So I'd probably go for Galway. But to be honest, like, a lot of people said Galway last year and had a lot of eggs in their faces after Kilkenny turned up in Croke Park and won that. So we'll have to wait and see. Kilkenny are probably the big game monsters or mentality monsters. But Galway, with the injuries Kilkenny have, you have to expect that Galway will get over the line. And just to finish, we'll go on to the Tailteann Cup this weekend, which is the only action in football circles this weekend, unless you are a minor football fan. And in any case, I will be going to the Cork and Dublin game in Nolan Park on Saturday. So, there's stats on that. But obviously, there's not enough knowledge for me and Darragh to judge on the minor. So we will do that later on in the summer. But we'll do the Tailteann Cup here. Carlow against New York in the preliminary quarter-final Saturday at 5 p.m. on GA. Interesting game, this. Carlow, 3 games, 2 wins. They only lost to Limerick. Beat Wicklow and Longford, and beat Longford really at a canter. It was a brilliant win for Carlow, and Darragh Foley became, I think, Carlow's all-time top scorer, which was an amazing achievement from him. But then you look at New York, beat Leitrim. I know they lost to Sligo, but they have, the confidence running through their veins. They went to Ireland last year to play Offaly. They went to Ireland to play Sligo, so you think they're well used to it now. They're now on the road to Carlow. They have Shane Carty in the team, Adrian Varley, Mikey Brosnan. There's some very good players in the New York team. So this will be a close one to call.
It could be, and it might not be at the same time, as games beat any sort of training any day of the week. Like Carlow played is a 4 or 5 games compared to New York's last game. Like that's chalk and cheese to what New York are doing. That's probably put Carlow as form favourites for me. Like I'd like to see New York win, but it's hard to see him winning when you don't have the game practice. Like if you're speaking from a player perspective, probably a pound for pound better players, but it's just the difference between playing championship games and train matches should put in Carlow's favour.
Probably should. I'd probably go for Carlow as well. But for Carlow, like I mentioned this on many podcasts in the last week as well, that this will be, if they win this game, of course, against New York, we can't count against the Exiles at all. But this will be Carlo's second Tailteann Cup quarter-final appearance in a row. Like, in fairness, from a team that performed so poorly in the league and didn't do so well in the Tailteann Cup, it's probably epitomises how important the Tailteann Cup could be for counties like Carlow to, cherish it and go on and run in it.
Oh yeah, definitely. It shows why we had to introduce the competition, but it probably need to introduce a third tier if I'm being honest. Like, if you introduce a third tier, just say with your Division 4 teams, call a spade, just put all Division 4 team, maybe bottom 2 or 3 in Division 3 into it as well. Wouldn't it be better to see Carlow win a competition than just get into a quarter final? Be my thinking of it. Even Waterford have a chance to win the game. Like, if you look at Waterford this year in the league, did they lose one a game? But like, they were very competitive in most games, only lost by a point or two most of them. So like, if you're looking to develop it in the county, you kind of need to be adding in the third tier, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, exactly. But we're both predicting a Carlow win for this game, and it'd be great to see either side being in a quarter final. It'd be brilliant to see either Carlow or New York in the last 8. And another game that'll be on GA is down against Longford at 7 p.m. in Park Esler on Saturday. You would expect Carlow New York in some instances to be a tight game, but down in Longford there's probably polar opposites between the two sides. I know both of them are Division 3 this season, but down bring back to Kilcoo lads. There's a feel good factor around Conor Laverty's team. They kind of just had a blip last Saturday against Meath, but you'd kind of have to expect that Down will win this game.
Oh yeah, and he did if down 17 whites the last day. I think if you put over half them, they would have coming out victors. Would have been Meath playing this weekend. But even there was rumours last night Conor Laverty was playing for Kilcoo last night in County League, so, and a few Kilcoo boys. So look, I think I don't really give Longford a prayer, to be honest with you. I think Downfy out to show they're not just talked about as contenders, that they actually can win the thing.
Exactly, yeah. And when you look at the contenders in it, just as a matter of interest, because we'll talk about one of them later on in the next few games at Fermanagh, but you look at Down, Fermanagh, Cavan, Meath, possibly like Antrim's form is pretty good as well. So like, those counties look the front runners at the moment for the Tailteann Cup. You could count Offaly in that as well.
Well, I wouldn't count Meath anyway. I was in watching the Waterford game. If Waterford took their chances, geez, they would have been close enough or should have won it. Like, the third goal giveaway was extremely soft, but Meath's defence was like the Red Sea there sometimes. It just was ridiculous. Like, Waterford had 5 goal chances in the first half. I say they scored 2 and they should have scored 1 and they should have scored the other 4, like straight at the goalie, hit the post, hit the crossbar. Scuffed the shot. It's just I couldn't get over Meath's defence. Like, they're trying to kick past too often, to be honest, and just Waterford broken the counter attack. I just wasn't too convinced by him. My probably finalists were probably Cavan and Down potentially be my 2 contenders. Probably give Down just about favourites, but I could see Fermanagh. Well, Fermanagh haven't been impressive so far in the Tailteann Cup. They've been more impressive in the league, to be honest with you. It's hard to know, did they focus too much on the league? And then Offaly, maybe with the energy, with the passing of Liam Kearns, they could be a potential shout for dark horses.
Possibly so. It'll be very, very interesting. But we both predict the Down win against Longford. And speaking of Offaly, we'll move on to Offaly next in Tullamore against Wexford at 4 p.m. This might be an easy win for Offaly, looking on paper, but look at last year. Wexford shocked Offaly in the Leinster Championship, albeit Offaly did beat them in the Tailteann Cup. So, and Wexford have performed well this season. They beat Leitrim. They drew to a very decent Fermanagh team as well. Darragh Brooks is doing well in goal. Robbie Brooks in the full forward line. And Ben Brosnan is as evergreen as ever in that Wexford team. But you look at Offaly, look at Cian Farrell back to fitness. I know they're missing Johnny Maloney and Niall McNamee this year. That'll be big loss to them. They still have Jack Bryan at the young gun in the full forward line as well. So you'd have to expect Offaly to win it. But Wexford will definitely put it up to their Leinster rivals in this game.
Oh, Wexford and Offaly is usually always a close game. I've never seen it be a hammer in any other game they ever play. But look, I'd give Offaly just to win it. I don't see him hammering them out, to be honest with you. I'd give him a 5 or 6 points. Like, Wexford have probably been, would you say they've probably been the most impressive Division 4 team in the Tailteann Cup? I'd probably say so. Like, they've been contenders for most impressive anyway. But they've been, I think it'd be a close game. But look, it kind of, a lot has to go for Wexford way if they want to win it, to be honest with you.
To be honest, to counteract that argument, what about Carlow? Like, a Carlow been the most impressive Division 4 team?
See, Wexford, yeah, I'd suppose 3 from 2, and they should have been 3 from 3. And then at the same time, yeah, well, do you think who is more likely to get further in the Tailteann Cup? You'd probably say Cardo at this stage. So I'm after ruining my own counterpoint, but at the same time, I'd like to think Wexford I actually could give Wexford a chance, but I think Offaly just have the better players all around and better subs to bring on. Like, what's the population? I say Wexford, I don't know personally, but Wexford's probably in the same situation as Waterford, that the best players aren't playing for them in the football.
Yeah, definitely. So when you look at Wexford over the past few seasons, like Matty Ford, Kieran Ling, PJ Banville, like Dottie Waters, like they were such good footballers back in the day, especially in 2008 when they reached that All Ireland. But I feel like Wexford are a kind of county that are coming back into it now. Like John Hagerty managed Shelmaliers previously, got out to a Leinster semi-final. He's done some good work with Wexford so far this season. There's still some young players to come in. I'm not sure is Alan Banney going to come through, the winner of Ireland to his family. He might be coming into the football team in the next few seasons. So there's still some positives for Wexford, even if they do lose on Saturday. I predict Offaly to win as well, as a matter of interest.
Yeah, I think Wexford if you're looking at Wexford and Waterford in the next 5 years, Wexford probably be in a way better position than Waterford, if I'm being honest. If you just, I know both counties do the split season debate, hurling first and then football, but Waterford Club Championship is very competitive, but so is Wexford. But if you're talking about younger players and development side of things, I think Wexford's a mile clear in terms of development for the future.
Yeah, I'd like to see both counties develop, to be fair, Wexford and Waterford, but we'll see in the next few seasons. Like, it was great for Wexford to reach Northern semi-final back at the day, and we'll go on to the last game in the Tailteann Cup this weekend. It is Fermanagh against Laois at 6 p.m. on Saturday in Brewster Park in Enniskillen. You mentioned earlier on in the chat, Darragh, that Fermanagh have not been decent in the Tailteann Cup. They've been more decent in the league, reaching the league final in Division 3, got close enough to Cavan in Croke Park. But to be fair, Laois haven't been impressive either. I know in the first game against Cavan, I watched that game. I thought they were very, very good. Evan O'Carroll in the full forward line, Mark Barry scoring for fun. But then they threw away a sizable lead against Offaly in Port Laois, and then they drew to London, who, to be honest, were going nowhere this season. So, like, both counties performed poor in this Tailteann Cup campaign. For that reason, you'd probably have to predict the team with the most impressive league to win it, and that's probably Fermanagh.
Oh yeah, based off league form is Fermanagh with an easy win. Like Laois, the first day against Cavan, they were right in it until the penalty nearly Cavan got it. It's a bit dubious probably, but even then the second day they kind of just, I don't know what happened to them. They just kind of gave up the ghost, really, just threw away a big lead. And then even the last day, sure, London were leading until that was a more or less last kick of the game, and then the goalie with the free so saved them that way. But like, look, Laois football's not a great place at the moment. Like, they're just, I don't know what's after happening. They're just low crowds, people not going. Look, the dominance of clubs like Port Laois isn't happening. I know Port Ireton's still there, but like Port Laois back in the day or so, dominance, they're not even competing anymore. Underage, I know they had the win there at the beginning of the year in their 20s, but they're still not getting any kind of players coming through. Would you say even the hurling's not even at a strong point? It's just at least GA in general is just on a downward spiral.
It is, to be fair. Like, when you look at Laois's players, actually, like, even you mentioned the underage, they reached an under-20 final in 2020. It got close to Dublin, and Dublin team containing Lorcan O'Dale, Kieran Archer, all them in 2020. They got close to them with the likes of Mark Barry in that team. And they don't seem to be bringing players through, which is probably the most frustrating thing with Laois. And it's kind of a situation where we might not see the likes of brilliant players like Ross Mudley, John O'Loughlin, Colin Begley in the Laois team again, which is quite sad because they're a historic football county.
Oh yeah, even looking back through the years, they've always been competing underage, all Ireland titles. I know they didn't bring it to senior like their Leinster title back in the early 2000s. So probably the high point for them. But look, it's hard to know what they're going to do. It's the same boat as your lower, wider in Division 4. Look, their development hasn't been great and depends still on other players trying to win them games. It's hard to see what will happen. If you're going back to the game, Fermanagh should win by nearly 8 or 10 points based off how the two teams performed. I know Fermanagh haven't been great, but they have the better players, if you ask me.
And you have mentioned the better players there, Olton Kelm, Sean. I don't know actually if Sean Quigley going to be fit for this game, but you still have Olton Kelm in there, Aidan Breen, Darragh McGurn. Like, Fermanagh have a very good team, and it's kind of a weird one with them. We'll probably expect them to win this game in particular and get to the quarterfinals. but particularly in the Tailteann Cup group stage, they weren't at their very best. Like Antrim beat them, and Antrim, to be honest with you, are more of a Division 3, Division 4 team, if that's fair. So, like, Fermanagh have not performed well considering their league form and considering the players they have.
Oh, I definitely did. If you're speaking on paper, they definitely have the better players that they should be contending higher. Even they should top the group realistically if you're basing off the league. But like my opinion probably be, I know you added in the extra games, but should only 2 teams get out the Tailteann Cup just with these preliminary groups, you're probably going to say that all the home sides are going to win. Retrospectively looking at it, like should it just be top 2 go through, add a bit more spice to the competition itself, or even like last year probably was more entertaining, it was straight knockout, if you get me. Like,
yeah, definitely. So there will be discussions about the structures and all that. Personally, I just think there's little dead rubbers in particular. I know there was one last weekend with Limerick and Wicklow, but I don't think there's any dead rubbers. That's my counter argument to you. But at the same time, I do get your point that only 4 teams are going to be knocked out, or 5 out of the Tailteann Cup if you're talking about that. 4 if you're talking about the Sam Maguire, which probably isn't enough for 3 rounds of games. So there's for and against for this argument, but I'd imagine this will go long into the summer in particular.
oh yeah, definitely. Look, if you look at the Hurling, there's some debate about should your Joe McDonough still be in it, and should you have 4 plays go through. But I think if you did that, it just ruined the kind of how the championship goes and the integrity, the tension, the action. Like, would you have that spectacle of Limerick Cork there last week if Cork were through? Probably not. Like,
Yeah, that's a very good argument, and we'll have to see how it all develops in the hurling and the football in the next few years, or later on down the summer. We'll have to see about that. But before we leave the podcast here, I just want to talk about your own YouTube channel in Doff Talks. Like, do you want to explain a bit about that? I've seen you're going into the YouTube, going deep dive into a YouTube channel now, Darragh. So do you want to explain to the viewers about that?
oh geez, it's more trying to get the name out there than anything. I said I'd put up a YouTube there, just Darragh O'Flynn, and as is Doff talking anything else, I kind of just uploading little videos to hope to do a few interviews, just general sport, predominantly GA, but it's just looking for a CV. I'm doing the Masters in Journalism in UL there at the moment, so have a thesis for the summer, which would be fun. But look, is trying to just get the name out there and hopefully it'll work out and get a few follows anyway. I appreciate any support I've had so far. It's been great so far. You haven't had many negative comments and people so saying it's great. So look, I appreciate any support. Follow it if you want. I won't be giving out if you don't.
Exactly so, and I see you're doing marvelous work on TikTok, on Instagram as well, and hopefully YouTube will rise up through the ranks as well. And yeah, thanks for anybody that viewed the podcast today. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and follow Jay Statsman on Instagram, TikTok, all them social media sites, and of course follow Doff Talks. Darragh's account on TikTok, some very good content there, Instagram as well, and of course his own YouTube channel. Subscribe to that if you haven't already. So thanks, Darragh, for coming on to the podcast. And your podcast is doing well. Waterford aren't at the moment, but hopefully Waterford will in the next few years in general. So thanks for coming on, Darragh.
No, that's a Matthew anytime. Hopefully we'll get back up there yet, Waterford.